Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribol. Haribol, Siddheshvar Das. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare
Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutare Jumati Siddhesvar Ananda Bhagya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Seva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare. So welcome Siddheshvar Das. So si Siddheshvar Das siya siyang initiated disciple ni Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada at saka yung kanyang instructing spiritual master si Siddhaswarup Ananda Pramhamsa Prabhupada. Siddheshvar Das, please. The table is yours. Namaste. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Got a kind of a small group this time. Hopefully, it'll get bigger. I sent out about 100 invitations, but I didn't have the password and everything, so I hope that they'll be able to show up. Some of them, anyway. For those of you who don't know, my name is Siddheshvar Das, and today we're looking at Bhagavad Gita. And we're not taking it verse by verse, as it's often done, although one could easily spend an hour on every verse, but rather we're looking at it in context with what's going on and what Arjuna is thinking and talking about and so forth in the Gita. Can everybody hear me okay? Am I loud enough? Yeah? Okay. Good. Thank you. We're starting with chapter 6, and I'm not sure we're going to get much beyond that, because chapter 6 in itself is quite a difficult chapter to comprehend for devotees. For me, when I was a very, very neophyte transcendentalist yogi kind of person, having only just met Srila Prabhupada and thinking that everything was impersonal, I found this particular chapter is where I started to get really confused, because, well, in the first place, I understood that this is supposedly God talking to Arjuna, but my concept of God was that this Krishna person represented the supreme impersonal Brahmajyoti, the great light or enlightenment kind of a thing. And therefore, it isn't Krishna that I should be, paying attention to, but the real message behind that, that's available through meditation. Anyway, after so much, Krishna has already explained karma yoga, and he's touched on bhakti yoga, and he's made it very, very clear that work in devotion is far superior to impersonal meditation or some kind of jnana yoga or something like that. However, in this 6th chapter, he explains the 8-fold path of Sankhya Yoga. He begins the chapter by explaining that the neophyte yogi engages in fruitive sitting postures, while the advanced yogi, the true sannyasi, works without attachment. Now, this is very interesting. He goes on to explain later on how, you should straighten your spine and do certain exercises, and, sit on some kusa grass and all this stuff and everything, and that this somehow is going to increase your attachment to Krishna. He says, what is called renunciation is the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme. For no one can become a yogi unless they renounce the desire for sense gratification. In verse 3, Krishna says, for one who is a neophyte in the eightfold yoga system, work is said to be the means, and for one who has already attained yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. Now, you might, I hope you can see my confusion. When I looked at this, I thought, well, geez, cessation of all material activities. So I should go live in a cave and I should, practice meditation on nothing. And so that was, my idea of cessation of all material activities. However, Prabhupada explains later on that it is the cessation of material activities. And that includes sitting in a certain way with a certain posture, doing certain exercises. These are all material activities unless you're engaging in them and somehow in Krishna's service. The bhakta engages all of his senses and mind in transcendental activities. He no longer engages in material activities. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami says, the process of linking oneself with the Supreme is called yoga, and it may be compared to a ladder for attaining the topmost spiritual realization, especially this eightfold Sankhya Yoga system. This ladder begins from the lowest material condition of the living entity and rises up to perfect self-realization in pure spiritual life. Now that really says a lot to me, because that's exactly where I was when I met my guru, totally the lowest material condition of the living entity. And then he goes on to say, according to various elevations, the different parts of the ladder are known by different names. But all in all, the complete ladder is called yoga and may be divided into three parts, namely Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. Dhyana Yoga, D-H-Y-A-N-A, for those of you who may be wondering what that is apparently, I looked it up, it's meditation, basically. It's a type of meditation. Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, not this, not that, trying to figure out what is and what isn't. And Bhakti, the yoga of activity in devotion, devotional service. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami says, concerning this eightfold yoga system, attempts in the beginning to enter into meditation through regulative principles of life and the practice of different sitting postures, which are more or less bodily exercises, are considered to be fruitive material activities. All such activities lead to the achieving of perfect mental equilibrium to control the senses. That's the point of them. When one is accomplished in this practice of meditation, he ceases all disturbing mental activities. In the Krishna conscious person, the bhakta, however, is situated from the beginning on the platform of meditation, because he is always thinking of Krishna and being constantly engaged in the service of Krishna. The bhakta is considered to have ceased all material activities, because all of our activities are dedicated, devoted to, and offered to Krishna, offered to God. We're not engaged in material activities, no matter what it may look like to an outsider, a materialist, or whatever. Such a yogi liberates, not degrades himself, by his mind's activities. He carefully controls his mind and engages his body and himself in Krishna's service. The Astanga yogi strictly practices dhyana yoga or meditation in a secluded place, fixing his mind on the self and on Krishna, and that way he attains transcendental happiness in the kingdom of God. Now, I don't know about you, but again, this sounded very confusing to me, because now one thing is saying, that devotional service is really good, but the Sankhya yogi engages in meditation in a secluded place. Wow, I thought that was really confusing. Krishna says a person is said in this chapter, Krishna says a person is said to have attained to yoga when, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. So there you have it. So just like Bhaktivedanta said, just like Srila Bhaktivedanta said, for the bhakta, there is neither sense gratification nor fruitive activities. He further says, Bhaktivedanta further says, when a person is fully engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is pleased in himself, and thus he no longer is engaged in sense gratification or in fruitive activities. A Krishna conscious person can do everything for the satisfaction of Krishna, and thereby be perfectly detached from sense gratification. Those of you who might have been to India, you might run into, or even in other places, you might run into somebody who's supposedly practicing yoga, and they're walking around in very few clothing, kind of dirtyish, and you would think, if you were in America or in the West, you'd think that they are a beggar. So if you go and you offer them some money, they'll say, no, I cannot take money. I do not do anything with, I do not accept any material thing. Whereas a bhakta will say, oh, thank you very much, I will use it in Krishna's service. This is a major difference between the impersonalist and the bhakta. Bhakta uses everything in Krishna's service and is not afraid. The impersonalist thinks that, oh my gosh, if I accept this, then I may become controlled by it. It will control my mind. I will lose my concentration on the absolute, yada, yada, yada. The bhakta thinks, oh, this is great. I can use this to get some prasadam, some bhoga to offer to Krishna, or whatever it might be. The point being that even though a bhakta may appear to be engaging in so-called material activities, because he is acting consciously in Krishna's service, these are not fruitive activities. This yoga activity or yoga consciousness is carried out within the mind. Srila Bhaktivedanta says the purpose of the yoga system is to control the mind and to draw it away from attachment to sense objects. Now, this is all, I don't know, this is all very complex to me. You got the eightfold system, you got meditation, you got go to a secluded place, you got, doing stuff for Krishna, all these different things that Krishna and Bhaktivedanta Swami are saying are good things. It's all in the mind. You have to control your mind. So I'm going to ask you right now to please, as you're listening to all this, if you have a question, write it down, and we'll get to that in a while, because I'm not sure if I can explain this as clearly as it should be explained. The purpose of the yoga system is to control the mind and draw it away from attachment to the senses. One should not degrade himself by attraction to sense objects. The more one is attracted to sense objects, the more one becomes entangled in material existence. The best way to disentangle oneself is to always engage the mind in Krishna consciousness. We'll get to this in just a few minutes, but it's very interesting to note, as Bhaktivedanta Swami notes later on in this chapter, that of the three major forms of yoga, jnana and dhyana and bhakti, the jnana schools and the Ashtanga schools of yoga, they will simply not accept anybody who is not celibate. If you're not celibate, if you're not completely in control of your senses, then, you know, and can sit in meditation for hours on end, then they will not accept you. Bhakta, the Bhakta is the only, they don't accept householders. You cannot be a Jnani yogi or sadhana bhakti, Ashtanga yogi if you're a householder. Only, Prabhupada says, only bhaktas are strong enough to be able to accept householders, the householder ideal, simply because the idea in bhakti is to train the mind to engage and slowly detach from material activities while engaging in spiritual activities. Krishna says the mind is your best friend and it's your worst enemy. The controlled mind is your best friend. The uncontrolled mind is your worst enemy and will lead you to the lowest reaches of hell, believe me. He talks about laying out kusa grass and deerskin in a sacred place and fixing the mind on him. Again, Bhaktivedanta says that in this age of Kali, this kind of practice is not really very practical. In this instance, however, if you want to try to follow that ideal, well, if you're looking for a sacred place, make your home a sacred place during this pandemic. That's a great thing to do. Now, I see most of you have some picture of Krishna in the background. Most of you have turned your home into a sacred place. Of course, Binyan, the Binyan temple, for the lack of a better word, is also a very sacred place. Real yoga, Bhaktivedanta Swami says, is not possible without controlled sex desire and abstinence. However, only bhaktas allow their disciples to be householders. Krishna says the mystic transcendentalist attains to the kingdom of God, or the abode of Krishna, by the cessation of material existence. This is where it can really kind of get confusing, especially for someone who has no guru. The transcendentalist attains to the kingdom of God, or the abode of Krishna, by the cessation of material existence. So that sounds like I should just cease to exist, doesn't it? That's why you need guru to explain what that actually means. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami says regarding this impersonalism, he says, one cannot truly remain in the quality of Brahman, or this absolute divine light, until one's mind is fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna. To be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, or to remain in God consciousness, is to be factually liberated from the mode of passion and all material contamination. Are we clear so far? We're good? Okay. Good. Thank you. Excuse me just a second. Once again, we're in chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, interestingly, and particularly poignant and relevant to Kali Yuga, after Krishna delineates this eightfold path of meditation in Sankhya Yoga, Arjuna rejects it. Arjuna says, "Oh, Madhusudana, the system of yoga that you have summarized appears totally impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady." He points out the main difficulty in practicing this kind of yoga is to control the mind. He says, for the mind is restless, it's turbulent, it's obstinate, and very, very strong. O Krishna, and to subdue it is, it seems to me, more difficult than trying to control the wind. Now, anybody who's taken a good look at their mind and anybody who's practicing bhakti yoga and found themselves in a situation where the mind is giving them difficulty or the senses, you'll know how true that is. Krishna responds by saying that one can overcome the obstinate mind through constant practice, detachment, and determination. Again, as we said last week, last time we talked, it's not that everything just all of a sudden falls into place and you become the perfect yogi and you do everything just right. You may make a lot of mistakes. Your mind may take over in the most inopportune times, but you need to constantly practice this sadhana bhakti with detachment to, whether you did it right, whether you did it wrong, and determination to make it better, to learn and to control your mind through your devotion. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, however, says that this mind control isn't possible in this age, at least not by running off to the forest and trying to engage in some kind of meditation. However, he says, if one engages in the 9 types of devotional service to the Lord, or sadhana bhakti, the first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. And this is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all of its misgivings. Since time immemorial, we have been governed by our mind and senses. Whatever kind of body we've been in, an insect body or an animal body, from the moment they're born, they are controlled by their mind and senses. And in a human body, same thing. Same thing. So this has been going on for lifetime after lifetime. And Prabhupada is saying, Bhaktivedanta Swami is saying, you need to engage in this transcendental method, hearing about Krishna, chanting Krishna's name. And in this way, this transcendental method will purify your mind of all misgivings. He goes on to say, by discharge of devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction as the mind becomes detached from material objectives. I think we've all experienced this to one degree or another as well. It is something like curing, this is cool, it is something like curing a disease by not only expert treatment, but also an appropriate diet. He says, hearing of the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna and engaging in sadhana bhakti under the guidance of a pure devotee of the Lord is therefore the expert treatment for the mad mind. And eating foodstuff offered to Krishna is the appropriate diet for the suffering patient. right? This is bhakta. This is bhakti. Now, this was brought up last week in response to Arjuna's question about the fate of an unsuccessful yogi. Arjuna says, what is the destination of a man of faith who does not persevere? Who, in the beginning, takes to the process of self-realization, but later desists due to worldly mindedness and does not attain perfection in mysticism, perfect realization of Krishna. This is something that apparently a lot of people want to know the answer to, and Krishna answers very succinctly. He said that one unsuccessful in their practice may possibly come back in their next life as a demigod and enjoy in the heavenly planets, but then he will still, because of his advancement, whatever advancement he made, he will still take birth in a family of wise transcendentalists later on in his next life, and automatically become attracted to yogic principles. So even though such a person may leave his quest for self-realization, for understanding who Krishna is, they will nevertheless, they may have garnered some good karma or some good punya for having done whatever they did, but then they may take birth in as a demigod to enjoy all of that, whatever they've accumulated. But then they will take birth in the family of yogis or family of transcendentalists, and that natural attraction that his mind had a couple of lifetimes ago will continue. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami says, even a small amount of endeavor on the transcendental path offers great hope for deliverance. Out of these three yogas, jnana, astanga, and bhakti, the path of bhakti is especially suitable for this age because it is the most direct method of God realization. Krishna finally states in the last two verses of this chapter that the yogi is greater than the ascetic. He is greater than the jnani, and yes, greater than the karmi. And the greatest of all yogis is he who always thinks of Krishna and with great faith worships him in loving service. The particular verses go like this. A yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruit of worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. And of all yogis, he who abides in me with great faith, worshiping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. Cool, yeah? Knowing Krishna's instruction at the end of chapter 6, one should then initiate their practice of yoga from the point of concentrating the mind upon Krishna in their service. Chapter 7 opens with Krishna explaining knowledge of himself and his opulent energies. And thus, Arjuna can fully worship Krishna in so many ways, in so many forms, as described at the end of chapter 6, and think of Krishna with devotion as he fights. Krishna says, only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and their spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. The Bhagavad Gita is a mystery wrapped in an enigma. There are hundreds of translations of Bhagavad Gita, and only one has got it right. And that's because it seems to say so many different things unless one is looking at it through eyes smeared with the collyrium rod of devotion. Only unto those great souls is Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. And then he also says, bhakti means devotional service to me, to the Lord, which is free from desire for material profit, either in this life or in the next. Devoid of all such inclinations, one should fully absorb the mind in the Supreme. Fully absorb your mind in the Supreme. In this case, he's saying, fight. Use all of your astras, use all of your talent, all of your power, all of your military knowledge, fully absorbing your mind in me. These are some of the means for performance of bhakti or Krishna consciousness, the highest perfectional stage of the yoga system. And that concludes chapter 6. And I think that's really all we have time for this evening. Chapter 7 goes on to much. We'll get into that next time. Okay? So, namaste. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much for joining this. I hope you find solace and wisdom in the Bhagavad Gita, and I hope you feel that your time this evening was well spent. Are there any questions? Let me look at the chats here, see if there's any chat questions. Sal says, why do people undergo atonement if they cannot control their senses? Good question, Sal. I think what you're looking at is a process that's meant to do something, just as the process of offering food to Krishna or the process of marriage in Krishna yoga is meant to ultimately control the senses. At first, atonement is the idea, again, is that one makes atonement for, number one, getting rid of whatever bad karma was involved, and number two, learning to control their senses so that they don't have to make any more atonements. But in Christianity, atonement is, you have to chant so many Hail Marys and this and that, because you've done something that you shouldn't have done. In bhakti, when we do something that we shouldn't have done, we beg for forgiveness. We ask Srila Prabhupada to please understand that we are unqualified, unable to understand anything, that we're the lowest of the low, and that we will make every effort by their grace, by his grace, to be able to do the right thing next time. And then we go on, offering everything, offering everything to Krishna. In this way, we offer our life, we offer our being, we offer our existence and our activities to Krishna. I hope that answers your question. Jerry says, Namaste. What are the functions of our mind, spirit, and soul within the physical body? How does that work? Well, the spirit and soul are the same thing. We are spirit soul. We are eternal. We are eternal living parts and parcels of God, as is every living entity, not just humans. Every living entity is an eternal spark of God. No, the living entity that is a dog and the living entity that is a chicken is no less a part of God than you are. No less a soul than you are, and no less important. Well, maybe in some ways, but in terms of the overall, universe, everything exists to serve Krishna. And as far as the mind is concerned, well, this is our problem. When we take birth in this material world, it's because our mind is already filled with 1,001 desires for wealth, for happiness, material happiness, for prestige, for whatever have you, and our mind plays upon that and says, okay, hey, look over here, there's wealth. Look over here, there's sex desire or sexual fulfillment. Or look over here, there's something, a great steak to eat, or whatever it might be. The idea is that by offering our activities, our actions to Krishna, we learn to control the mind. We learn to say, no, I don't want to go to McDonald's today. I want to offer something to Krishna. No, I don't want to engage in some sinful activity. I don't want to go gambling at the casino today. I'd rather give my money to my spiritual master. And then but then of course you're thinking that if I give my money to my spiritual master, well, I'll be replenished 1,000-fold. And that ruins the offering in a sense, because then you're thinking of what is going to result from your generosity. But the devotee then sees the foolishness of thinking in that way and simply offers without any expectation of reward. And the controlled mind, as Krishna says very clearly in this chapter, is your best friend. When you, the spirit soul, when you can control this wild animal called the mind, then it becomes tame and it becomes your best friend. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Looking again into the chats, we see Ellen. How can we succeed in spiritual life as Maya is so darn strong? Boy, ain't that the truth. And that's the beauty of bhakti. That's the beauty of bhakti, in that, yes, Maya is very, very strong, and sometimes Maya wins, but you are in a constant battle with Maya. But then also the advanced devotee begins to realize that even Maya is engaged in Krishna's service, and somehow is able, the spiritual master can even recruit Maya to serve Krishna for him. That's the beauty of a pure devotee. But the idea being that how do we overcome Maya? By engaging in this sadhana bhakti, sadhana bhakti, sadhana bhakti, hearing, chanting, making offerings, serving the lotus feet, engaging in so many activities that are devoted, dedicated, and help us to meditate on Krishna. That's how we overcome Maya. Again, I hope that helps. I hope that answers your question. Maya is very strong. Maya, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, you know, every devotee comes to the point of saying to Krishna, I can't do it. Maya is too strong. I need your mercy. Without your mercy, I cannot overcome Maya. She is way too strong. Therefore, I'm begging you, please, give me your mercy. Shower your mercy upon me, even though I do not deserve it. Salvador says, is amen the same as om? I honestly can't tell you whether it is or not. Omkara is the sound of the universe chugging along. It is another name for Krishna. I have not studied amen, what it means, where it comes from. I'm not sure, although I must say it would not surprise me if they were related in some way. So, is that it? Any other question? You can also open your microphone and ask a question orally if you like. And if not, then I shall call upon the exquisite vocal talents of Balakrishna. Wait. Oh, somebody else is asking a question. Hang on, Bala. What happens if you don't control your mind? Kim, anything can happen. If you don't control your mind, you're screwed. You don't control your mind, anger gets the best of you. You end up killing somebody or doing worse, or you end up, somebody does you wrong, and all you can think about is how you can get back at that person. I mean, that's one thing that really happens a lot to people. You know, all they can think about is, what can I do to make that person feel just as horrible as they made me feel? You know, revenge. And your mind will lead you straight to hell. If you don't control your mind, it is, as Krishna says, your worst enemy. And there are some controls built into society where we say, you know, you shouldn't kill somebody on the street, you shouldn't rob somebody, you shouldn't steal, you got the 10 commandments kind of a thing. But even those go right out the window. Most people have broken almost all of the 10 commandments at one point or another in their life. Why? Because their mind is stronger than they are. If you don't control your mind, you cannot find Krishna. If you do not control your mind, you cannot find happiness. Your mind will lead you straight to hell. I mean, the worst aspects of hell. Okay, Kim? So, I hope that answers that question. Okay, without further ado, Balakrishna Das.
Thank you.
Hey, let's hear Kirtan. Haribo. Thank you, everybody.
Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prasthaya, Bhutale, Srimate Siddhaswarup Ananda, Pramhamsa, Iti Namine. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Ananda, Shri Dvaita, Gadadhara, Srivasade Gaura Bhaktivedanta. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Bol. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarup, Ananda Pramhamsa. Jaya Jaya Siddheswarup, Ananda Pramhamsa. Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Guru Dev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Guru Dev. Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jaya Om Vishnupad Pramhamsa Parivrajakacarya Statershata Shri Shrimad Jagadguru Siddhaswarup Ananda Prabhupada Ki Jai. Siddheshvar Das, thank you very much.
Thank you, Arbo.
Hari Bol.
Master Arbol.
Hari Bol. Namaste, William.
Thank you, Haribol.
Hari Bol. Thank you, Alan. Hari Bol.
Haribol po. Salamat.
Haribol.
Arbol, stay safe.
Hari
Stay
Bol.
safe. Arbo.